Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics in Metaphysics. Tonight we're answering a question by Molly, who is one of our producer level patrons, who I'm very grateful for. And there was a very interesting conversation on the Afterlife Topics Facebook group about this subject. So I haven't even read too much from the conversation. I'm just going to kind of brainstorm based off of my knowledge, some of the things I've researched about this, and we'll just see where it goes. And so that the question is, so what exactly are the differences and similarities to soul groups, soul families, and soul mates? Do we have a special group of souls that we spend time with on the other side and reincarnate with? Are these groups just different versions of reincarnations of our soul? Cyrus, can you make a video about these? All right. So obviously, this is definitely going to the kind of the Michael Newton type realm when we talk about soul groups, soul families, and motivations behind reincarnation. And I don't always see completely eye to eye with the life between lives type of subject, although I do think there's a lot of accurate info in that area as well. So really what I can offer is a bit of conjecture about this, definitely not gospel, just based on my experiences talking to deceased people and researching this subject, especially through mediumship accounts, seances, communications with the dead, stuff like that. The stuff that I cite in my books. Like if you want citations, I always say check out my books. Usually I'm going off the top of my head from stuff I've researched, but then I outline all of that in my books specifically. So, but before we jump into this topic, by the way, if you're new around here, if you hit that subscribe button, hit that blue notification bell, hit that share button, all that keeps this going. Or if you want to get involved, if you want like me to personally address videos for you, work with you one-on-one, get you involved in classes, and you can support this work, put money toward this whole project by becoming a patron as little as $3 a month, and that's at patreon.com/afterlife topics. Any help in that area is appreciated. So to continue, let me wrap my mind around this question. So similarities to soul groups, soul families, and soul mates. First of all, so as I've talked about before, like the concept of reincarnation appears to be that, as Silverbirch talks about, so we have a diamond, and in that diamond there's all these different facets. That the diamond represents the oversoul, and the facets are parts of that same greater mind that branch off and incarnate. Now every facet though has a link because it's coming out of the same mind basically. So if you met another facet to yourself, it'd be kind of like you're looking at something very close to being you, like a different version of you occupying different space, looks different than you, different background, but still it's your same mind that's being shared among one oversoul type of entity. We could argue that a soul mate we might meet somebody who is attached to our same oversoul in this life and find we have this incredible connection to that person because, again, we're almost like we're interacting with ourselves and our minds are fully synchronized up with each other's. So in that sense, that could be a soulmate as well as somebody in a group soul. And then if we choose to reincarnate, we might still be ourselves, but then the thing making that choice is the oversoul making another little facet to branch off. So that's kind of the orthodox opinion about this. But I think that there's a lot of wiggle room going on. First of all, I also think it might be possible to reincarnate in a more traditional way. I think that especially in cultures like here, by the way, in India, in case you're wondering all this palace architecture, where the heck I am, I'm in India. And here in Rajasthan, it's primarily Hindu. And I think in their astral planes, they believe so strongly in reincarnation, same with Buddhism, that I think in those situations, people really do reincarnate just as themselves, not in that oversoul way. So based upon my research, I think that this happens both ways. So now let's think about there being two types of reincarnation: oversoul reincarnation, where you don't go back as yourself. It's just that your group souls keep spinning off and creating new individual parts of it that are born, and then you can kind of sync up and share those same memories, learn the same things. So that's probably the most common way. Or then there's literal reincarnation, where you yourself come back, which has been chronicled like by Ian Stevenson. He chronicled that concept quite a bit. So I really do think that there's two types of reincarnation, and I think it's up to us what we want to do. And I think that's one of the dangers of like fundamentalist religions that push specific ways of looking at the universe, because they may say that if you fall into a belief system like that, then you may end up making choices that you think you have no choice, but all along it was something that you had complete control over. Maybe you didn't have to reincarnate because you, quote, messed up your karma, and then some authority figure came and told you have to reincarnate, and you made that choice. Some people report encountering these so-called archons, or like malevolent entities or mischievous entities that tell people that they have to reincarnate. And the mistake people make is they decide, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to agree to that now and come back. Because really it's up to us what we do. And so we just have to be really careful about that and then decide. But I do think that if the group soul is creating new elements of itself, then that's like a very safe way to incarnate again. Because again, it's like you're not. You can be living on that side multidimensionally, and then have a piece of yourself come back to the earth. And now, because you're part of the same group soul, the big difference now is you're able to share all the thoughts and share all the memories with that other person. And maybe eventually you and the other person kind of merge together into one being, or you stay separate. I don't really know, to be honest. I think there's a lot of gray area, because I think there's also this process of individualization. Like in theory, the group soul creates a new part of its same mind, it splits off, and this is part of the same collective. But what if that little facet just really individuates itself, doesn't want anything to do with the rest of its group soul? Well, nothing's going to be able to force that facet back into the diamond, and now it's kind of branching off and becoming its own thing, and very much becomes its own individual entity that's not attached to anyone or anything. Well, maybe in one sense it is, but in another sense, it's going off on its own journey. So that's another element of this as well. So let me see if I've touched on the main question. What are similarities: soul groups, soul families, soulmates? So again, like with soul families, again, it could be that, okay, well, there's something else here. And this is why this subject gets so confusing. So up until now, I've basically talked about the idea of the oversoul. And so this relates specifically to the greater mind in charge of your incarnations. Maybe that is 10, 20, 30, 40 people. Who knows? There's another kind of soul mind concept we could call the soul family, possibly, or a soul group. I like to differentiate it. We could call the singular mind among a group of people being an oversoul. But let's talk about a group soul that involves, on a wider level, many different entities that share a similar spirit energy about them. So as a joke, let's just say metalheads, people who listen to Apocalyptica, the guys who go to metal concerts, and they all seem to share that in common, right? Maybe we can argue that people who like metal music belong to one big metal, Nordic, Scandinavian, Viking style group soul or soul family, and everybody has that kind of connection with each other. And this is going to be a much wider, much bigger thing than just a normal little oversoul that just represents a small collective of people. Now, it's not like every person in that group is part of the same mind. They're all individuals, but now they're all connected. It's like, the oversoul is going a little bit deeper, but if you zoom out, you might see that a group soul is a collection of different oversouls, many different ones, all bound together, and each one contributing something unique. And then you can maybe zoom out even more, and maybe there's a spirit of an entire country. Maybe there's a big group soul for India, big group soul for Japan, which explains like the similarities in spirit and energy between so many people from one contiguous culture. So maybe there is a Japanese group soul. And like when I was in Japan, I really felt that. It's like every Japanese person I met, I was talking to both the individual and also like this person being representative of a much bigger collectivized mind. And as somebody who's a bit of a sensitive, like that's what I was able to pick up on. I'm picking up on the same thing big time here in India. When I talk with an Indian person, I'm not just talking to an Indian person. It's like I'm talking to an individual, maybe half an individual and half a representative of some big group soul that represents both like different levels. So that maybe there was a Rajasthani group soul, and we zoom out and there's one for the entire Indian, there's one for like the entire Indian country. Maybe when someone talks to me, they feel the group soul of America. Maybe there's like an American vibe off of me because that's where I was born into. And then we zoom out even more. Maybe the planet Earth has one big group soul for humanity. And then maybe we can just keep zooming out until we get to the final group soul. That's, I guess, God itself. Then we zoom all the way back in, all the way down to the oversoul, which might just be like 10 or 15 different souls that are all kind of sharing the same greater collective mind. And then we zoom down deeper to the single individual, and how that individual is still separated from all of the other layers, but also connected at the same time. So there you go. Probably one of the most complicated subjects in all of these metaphysical topics that kind of drives me crazy, but that might be one way of looking at it. So let me just try to summarize. If you find yourself around a bunch of people that you really connect with, most likely you share an energy in common because you have a kind of a soul family thing going on. Now, these might not necessarily be members of your specific oversoul, but it might be maybe one level above that to a community of people that kind of are sharing the same mind and then have these things in common. And then maybe you'll meet someone who you just have this bizarre experience with where it's like every single thing that they say, you feel like literally you guys are sharing the same exact, mental, like it's like your brains are just linked to each other. You might be meeting somebody from your close-knit oversoul who is literally like yourself. You've met a clone of yourself on an energetic spiritual level. In all these circumstances, I think we will get along very, very, very well with those people, or at least have a very strong connection. Will we always get along with ourselves if we met ourselves? I would wager that if you have a lot of like anger or hatred within yourself, well, maybe you would meet your equivalent who's part of the same mind. Maybe you guys would like want to kill each other because you have all this pent up frustration. Or alternatively, you might become immediately best friends. Now, does that mean that you're going to merge back with your best friend after you die? Maybe if this really is a member of your oversoul. But I also believe that anytime any entity is like branched off of a different soul, anytime like a soul is reproducing, for lack of a better word, then I think it individuates enough that becomes like a choice, right? So when we talk about a soulmate, it's kind of creepy to think that two people are going to become one again, because that means you no longer have a companionship. Now it's like you've canceled the other person out. And while I think that can happen, I also think that there's a level of choice involved. So let's say you're married to somebody in your oversoul, and so you guys are basically like, you just think as one unit. Maybe when you're both dead, there will be an option to just merge together, but there maybe will be an option not to do that and then to continue branching off as individuals. So I feel like that there is actually a choice that we can make along that level. So it's kind of like one last analogy, if this makes any sense. I recently saw Avengers Endgame. This is like a mild spoiler, but not really a spoiler, because if you've seen even like trailers, you know what the plot is. But if you don't want to know anything about the film, then maybe mute this. But basically, the film goes to time travel, so it has like kind of that Back to the Future element. You have characters going back in time, and then meeting themselves, and we see this played out a lot in different films. But a big theme of that film is that once these people who are themselves, they branch off and begin having different experiences in their lives, or they're from an earlier point in their lives, can we argue they're the same people? And in Avengers Endgame, like, there's this argument that's made that they're not. So we can, instead of saying like that's me over there, like they will refer to like with the character Nebula, Nebula was referring to her earlier self as her, not saying that's me, saying that's her, different set of ideas on a different path than me. She's been individuated on a different path in life. And in the film, it's like past Nebula and present Nebula were fighting each other, because basically in the Marvel flick, or in the Marvel universe, this particular character was like a supervillain and really evil in a couple films, and then she kind of switched to the good side, and then by Avengers 4, like, she was like working with the heroes, right? So now, so she's fighting her previous self. So the point of that is the argument that even if you're connected and you're the same person, when you begin having your own experiences and your own path in life, like, really, no matter what, you've broken off and you're now doing your own thing. So even if someone cloned you right now, you could say that this clone is part of your same mind. So literally, if you were cloned, this would be, you would be the oversoul, or you would, be part of the same consciousness, the same soul. But for how long? Eventually, that other you would begin having its own experiences and shaping its own thoughts, and would start to become different from its source. And then at that point, maybe it will arrive back together and join back up again with where it came from, and then share that knowledge, or maybe it will go off and be its own entity. So these are the thoughts that came to me. Some of this is just intuition talking, not necessarily based on objective evidence. I do have a little bit of a telephone line sometimes to other areas of thought. Maybe you can call it channeling, but you're not going to see me calling myself a channeler anytime soon. But I do think, what we interpret as that sometimes comes into play if I'm sort of like picking up info and then repeating it, but it doesn't mean it's God's word to your ears. I really don't know all the answers, and it's something to keep looking into. So that's it. Very complicated subject. Thanks for watching and listening to this mess all the way through. You can get involved, afterlifetopics.com. Learn more about these subjects in my latest book, The Afterlife and Beyond, on Amazon. And that's it. I'm getting a drink of water, and I'm going to go play a video game or something to get my mind off this crap. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next time.